Captain Jake Martinez stood on the bridge of the HSV Defiance and watched the stars slowly drift past the front window. His ship was 3 days away from Omega Point, a neutral space station where humans would meet with aliens for the first time in history. The Galactic Council had invited Earth to join their group of civilized worlds, and Jake felt the weight of this responsibility on his shoulders. The Defiance was not the biggest ship humans had built, but it was their best. Clean white halls stretched through 5 decks. The crew of 42 people worked together like a well-oiled machine. Jake had chosen each person himself. They were smart, brave, and ready for anything the galaxy might throw at them. Doctor Lisa Thompson walked onto the bridge carrying a datapad in her hands. She was the ship's chief scientist and knew more about alien technology than anyone else on Earth. Her brown hair was tied back in a simple ponytail. Her lab coat showed small burn marks from her latest experiments. "Captain, I've been studying the alien tech samples the Council sent us," she said, handing him the datapad. "Their energy weapons are incredible. They can punch through our best armor like it's made of paper." Jake looked at the information and frowned. The aliens had weapons that could destroy whole cities with one shot. Their ships moved faster than anything humans had ever built. Their shields could stop nuclear bombs without breaking. Compared to them, human technology looked like stone tools. "What about our weapons?" Jake asked. Lisa shook her head. "Our railguns and missiles are nothing to them. They think we're primitive, because we still use kinetic weapons. To them, shooting bullets is like throwing rocks." Commander Tony Baker stepped forward. He was the ship's military expert, a tall man with gray hair and sharp eyes who had spent 20 years in Earth's Space Force. "Maybe that's not such a bad thing," he said quietly. "Sometimes the enemy doesn't expect rocks." Before Jake could respond, the ship's communication system crackled to life. Lieutenant Amy Foster's voice came from the pilot's seat at the front of the bridge. She was young, maybe 25, with quick hands and quicker reflexes. "Captain, we're getting a transmission from outside normal space lanes. It's not the space station." "Put it on screen," Jake ordered. The main display flickered and showed the image of an alien, unlike any they had seen before. Its skin was dark gray like stone, and its eyes glowed red in a face that looked carved from rock. When it spoke, its voice sounded like grinding metal. "Human vessel, I am Commander Zektar of the Corvin Empire. You will surrender your ship immediately, and prepare to be boarded. Your species has no place among the civilized races of the galaxy." Jake stepped forward. "This is Captain Martinez of Earth's diplomatic vessel, HSV Defiance. We are on a peaceful mission to Omega Point under Galactic Council protection." Zektar's mouth opened in what might have been a laugh, showing teeth like broken glass. "The Council protects nothing. We have studied your pathetic species. You fight with crude projectile weapons like savage animals. You destroy your own planet with pollution and war. You are not worthy to breathe the same air as true spacefaring races. Where there had been empty stars a moment before, now dozens of massive alien warships hung in the darkness. They were black as the void between stars, covered in weapon ports that glowed with deadly energy. The smallest was twice the size of the Defiance. Amy turned in her seat, her face pale. "Captain, my sensors show 47 enemy vessels. They appeared out of nowhere. I think they have some kind of cloaking technology." Chief Engineer Sam Rodriguez's voice came through the communication system from the engine room. He was a stocky man who could fix anything and make it work better than new. "Captain, they're surrounding us. I'm reading massive energy signatures from their weapon arrays." Dr. Thompson grabbed the captain's arm. "Jake, one of those ships could destroy us with a single shot. All of them together could crack a moon."
Ow.
Alien Commander's voice filled the bridge again. "You have 60 seconds to surrender." Jake looked around at his crew. They were scared. He could see it in their eyes. But they were ready to fight. Humans had always been fighters. When the odds were impossible, when the enemy was too strong, humans found a way to win, or died trying. "All hands battle stations," Jake announced over the ship's communication system. This is not a drill. Red lights began flashing throughout the ship as the crew prepared for combat. Amy's hands danced over her controls as she brought the ship's weapons online. The Defiance had 6 railgun turrets and 20 missile tubes. Against one alien ship, they might have a chance. Against 47, they were like a mouse challenging a pack of wolves. Incoming transmission from Omega Point, Amy reported. New alien appeared on the screen. This one was tall and thin, with blue skin and large silver eyes. She wore flowing robes that seemed to shift color in the light. I am Ambassador Velenara of the Galactic Council. Commander Zektar, you are in violation of Council law. This human vessel is under our protection. Zektar's image appeared beside hers. The Council grows weak, Ambassador. You invite primitive beings to join civilized society. These humans are barely more than animals. Look at their crude ship, their pathetic weapons. They still fight with kinetic projectiles like their ancient ancestors throwing spears. The humans have passed all required tests for Council membership, Velenara replied firmly. Tests mean nothing, Zektar snarled. I will show the galaxy why these creatures should be exterminated before they spread their violence to other worlds. Transmission ended. Jake knew they had run out of time for talking. The alien ships were moving closer, forming a perfect sphere around the Defiance. Energy readings were climbing as they prepared to fire. Sam, what's our shield status? Jake. Called to the engine room. Full power, Captain. But it won't matter. These things could punch through a battle station's shields. Tony moved to stand beside the captain's chair. Jake, we need to think about this differently. They expect us to fight like they do. Big ships, energy weapons, shield battles. If we don't, what do you mean? I mean, we're humans. We don't fight fair. We use everything we have, everything around us. This ship isn't just a weapon. Every part of it can be a weapon if we're creative enough. Dr. Thompson looked up from her data pad. Tony might be right. I've been analyzing their formation. They're positioning themselves for a standard energy weapon exchange. But what if we don't use standard weapons? Jake felt a spark of hope. Amy, can you get us to that asteroid field near Omega Point? The young pilot checked her navigation screen. Maybe, if we time it right, but they'll be shooting at us the whole way. Sam, what do we have in the cargo bays? Standard supplies, Captain. Construction materials, spare parts, emergency equipment. Nothing that looks like a weapon. Tony smiled grimly. Sam, you're thinking like an alien. To a human, everything is a weapon if you use it right. Suddenly, the ship shook as energy beams struck their shields. The lights flickered, and warning alarms began to sound. The Corvin ships had opened fire. Shields down to 60%, Rami reported as another blast hit them. Jake gripped his chair as the ship rocked under the alien assault. All right, people, they think we're primitive. They think we're weak. Let's show them what humans do when someone tries to push us around. The HSV Defiance shook as another energy blast hit their shields. Captain Jake Martinez held onto his chair and watched the shield readings drop on the main screen, at maybe 10 minutes before the Corvin weapons broke through completely. Amy. Get us moving toward that asteroid field, Jake ordered. Use everything you've got. Lieutenant Amy Foster's hands flew over her controls. The ship lurched forward as she pushed the engines to maximum power. Behind them, the Corvon fleet followed like hungry wolves, chasing wounded prey. Energy beams lit up space around the Defiance, some missing by inches. Tony, get down to the cargo bay and start gathering anything we can use, Jake said to Commander Tony Baker. I don't care if it's spare parts or toilet paper. If it exists on this ship, it's now a weapon. Tony nodded and ran toward the elevator. As the doors closed, he called back, Sam, meet me in cargo bay 2. Bring your toolkit. Dr. Lisa Thompson was already working at her science station, her fingers dancing over the controls. Captain, I'm scanning their ships. Their hulls are designed to absorb energy weapons, but I don't think they've ever planned for kinetic impacts.
What do you
mean? Jake asked. Their armor is like a sponge for energy beams, but it might crack if you hit it with something solid moving fast enough. They've built their entire defense around fighting other energy-based civilizations. Another blast rocked the ship. Amy called out from the pilot seat, shields down to 30%. At this rate, we've got maybe 5 more minutes. In cargo bay 2, Tony and Sam Rodriguez stood surrounded by boxes, crates, and equipment that filled the large space. To most people, it looked like a storage room. To them, it looked like an armory waiting to be discovered. Sam picked up a standard maintenance robot, the kind used to clean the outside of the ship. These little guys have magnetic grippers and small thrusters. What if we loaded them with explosives? Yeah, what explosives? Tony asked. Sam grinned and pointed to a stack of emergency oxygen canisters. Hit one with a welding torch, and it becomes a bomb. Tony's eyes lit up. Sam, you're a genius. How many maintenance bots do we have? 12 working units. But I've got an idea for something bigger. Sam walked over to a construction mech sitting in the corner. It was designed for building space stations, with heavy lifting arms and industrial cutting tools. Amy knows how to pilot these things. What if we turned it into a war machine? Meanwhile, Dr. Thompson had left the bridge and gone to the medical bay. She stood looking at the surgical equipment with new eyes. The laser scalpel could cut through human tissue with perfect precision. The bone saw could slice through the hardest materials. The medical scanner could see through solid walls. She grabbed her communicator. Captain, I'm in the medical bay. I think I can turn our surgical equipment into precision weapons. These lasers are designed to cut living tissue, but they should work just fine on alien electronics. On the bridge, Jake smiled grimly. Do it, Lisa. Turn our sickbay into a weapons lab. Amy called out again. Captain, we're almost to the asteroid field, but the aliens are gaining on us. One count 15. Ships breaking off from the main group to follow us. Good, Jake said. 15 is better than 47. The ship flew into the asteroid field, weaving between chunks of rock and ice that spun slowly in the darkness. Some were as small as cars, others as big as buildings. Amy's piloting skills kept them alive as energy beams exploded, asteroids all around them in cargo bay 2. Tony and Sam had worked fast. The maintenance robots now carried oxygen tanks fitted with small charges that would detonate on impact. The construction mech had been modified with welding torches mounted on its arms like flamethrowers. Amy, this is Tony, he said into his communicator. I need you down here. We've got a present for our alien friends. Amy set the ship's autopilot and ran to the cargo bay. When she saw the modified construction mech, her face broke into a grin. Oh, this is going to be fun. Can you pilot it? Tony asked. I can pilot anything with thrusters and attitude jets, Amy replied, climbing into the mech's control seat. But how do we get it outside? Sam pointed to the cargo bay doors. Simple. We open the bay, you fly out, and you show those aliens what human engineering can do when it gets creative. Dr. Thompson's voice came over the communicator. I'm ready up here. I've got 3 surgical lasers rigged to work through the ship's external sensor ports. They're not very powerful, but they're accurate enough to target specific components. On enemy ships. Jake nodded on the bridge. All right, people. Here's the plan. Amy, you take the mech out and cause as much chaos as possible. Lisa, you provide precision support with your medical lasers. Sam and Tony launch those robot bombs. At anything that moves? The ship shuddered as it took more hits. The shields flickered and failed completely. Now, only the ship's armor stood between them and the alien weapons. Amy, go now, Jake ordered. The cargo bay doors opened, and air rushed out into space. Amy fired the mech's thrusters and shot out of the ship like a bullet.
Out.
The construction mech spun through space toward the nearest Corvan vessel, its modified arms glowing with welding fire. The alien ship was 3 times the size of the mech. But Amy didn't care about size. She activated the magnetic grippers and clamped onto the enemy hull. The welding torches came alive, cutting through alien armor like it was made of butter inside the Corvan ship. Alarms sounded as hull breaches appeared where no weapons should be able to reach. The aliens had energy shields designed to stop energy weapons, but they had no defense against a human with cutting tools physically attached to their hull. What is this? Commander Zekdar demanded from his flagship.
War.
They cutting through our armor? His weapons officer looked confused. Sir, They appear to be using some kind of construction equipment as a weapon. Our shields are useless against physical contact. Meanwhile, Sam and Tony launched their modified maintenance robots. Small machines flew through space like guided missiles, each one carrying an oxygen tank bomb. They were too small for the alien weapons to target effectively. And their magnetic systems let them stick to enemy hulls before exploding. Dr. Thompson fired her surgical lasers with deadly precision. The beams were thin as needles, but they struck exactly where she aimed them. She targeted sensor arrays, communication dishes, and weapon control systems. To the aliens, it looked like their ships were being hit by invisible sniper fire. One Corvin ship tried to ram the Defiance, but Amy saw it coming. She pushed off from her current target and flew the mech directly into the attacking ship's bridge. The welding torches melted through the front window, and the alien ship spun out of control. "This is impossible," Zektar roared. "They're using maintenance equipment as weapons. How can primitive beings fight like this?" His tactical officer studied the battle. "Sir, they're not following any known combat doctrine. They're improvising everything. Our computers can't predict their next move because they're not using real weapons." Jake watched from the bridge as the alien ships began to retreat. 3 were badly damaged, their hulls torn open by welding torches and small explosions. 2 more drifted powerless, their control systems fried by surgical lasers. "Amy, get back to the ship," he ordered. "You've done enough damage for now." Amy flew the mech back to the cargo bay, grinning inside her helmet. "Captain, that was the most fun I've had since flight school." But their celebration was short-lived. The remaining Corvin ships regrouped and began moving toward them again. This time, they kept their distance and used long-range weapons. Dr. Thompson checked her sensors. "Captain, the main fleet is moving toward us, all 47 ships. There's something else. A really big energy signature coming from the back of their formation." Jake's blood ran cold. "How big?" "Big enough to crack a planet." Commander Zektar's voice filled the bridge again. "Clever humans, you fight like the primitive beasts you are. But this ends now. I will show the galaxy what happens to species that dare to challenge the Corvan Empire." The main screen they watched as something huge moved through the alien fleet. It was a ship so massive it made the other Corvan vessels look like toys. Weapon ports covered its hull like stars in. The sky and energy crackled around it like controlled lightning. "That's a dreadnought," Tony said quietly. "A planet killer." Jake looked around at his crew. They had won the first round by being creative and unpredictable. But now, they faced something beyond their ability to fight with improvised weapons. Amy checked her navigation controls. "Captain, we're too deep in the asteroid field to run, and even if we could, that thing would catch us before we got to hyperspace." Sam's voice came from the cargo bay. "Captain, we used up most of our improvised weapons in that last fight. Can make more, but it'll take time we don't have." Jake stared at the massive alien ship growing larger on their screen.
Saw somewhere.
His mind an idea began to form. It was crazy, impossible, and probably suicidal. In other words, it was perfectly human. "Tony, how much do we know about alien ship construction?" "What do you mean?" "I mean, the bigger they are, the more complicated they are. It's more systems, more power conduits, more things that can go wrong if someone knows where to push." Dr. Thompson looked up from her station. "Jake, you're not thinking what I think you're thinking." The Corvin dreadnought moved through space like a mountain of metal and death. Captain Jake Martinez stared at it on the main screen and tried not to think about how small his ship looked in comparison. The alien vessel was over 2 miles long, bristling with enough weapons to destroy entire fleets. "Captain, I'm reading massive energy buildup from their main gun," Dr. Lisa Thompson reported from her science station. "If they fire that thing, it won't just destroy us. It'll vaporize everything in this entire asteroid field." Lieutenant Amy Foster turned from her pilot controls. "Jake, what's this crazy plan you're thinking about?" Jake walked to the center of the bridge and looked at each of his crew members. "We can't fight that thing with weapons. We can't outrun it. But we might be able to get inside it, Commander." Tony Baker raised an eyebrow. "You want to board a ship that size? They probably have thousands of crew members and security systems we can't even imagine." That's exactly why it might work, Jake replied. They're not expecting it. Look at how they've been fighting us. They keep trying to use their advanced technology against our simple weapons. They think in straight lines. We think in circles. Sam Rodriguez's voice came through the communicator from the engine room. Captain, what exactly are you planning? Sam, how many maintenance pods do we have left? 3 working units. But Captain, those things are barely big enough for one person and some tools. Perfect, Jake said. Amy, I need you to take a pod and get inside that dreadnought. Once you're there, find their power systems and cause as much damage as possible. Amy's eyes went wide. You want me to break into the biggest, most dangerous ship in the galaxy with nothing but a maintenance pod and a toolkit? Not just any toolkit, Tony said, beginning to understand the plan. Sam, what kind of equipment do our maintenance pods carry? Sam thought for a moment. Standard repair gear, welding torches, plasma cutters, emergency power cells, circuit testers, hull patching materials, magnetic clamps. Dr. Thompson looked up from her console. Jake, that might actually work. Alien ships that big need massive power distribution networks. If someone could get inside and start overloading the right systems, the whole ship could tear itself apart, Jake finished. Amy, are you willing to try it? Amy Foster had always been the kind of person who jumped out of perfectly good airplanes. For fun, the idea of sneaking into an alien dreadnought with nothing but maintenance tools made her heart race with excitement. When do I leave? She asked. Right now, Jake said. But first, we need to give you a distraction. Jake turned to the ship's communication system. All hands. This is the captain. We're about to try something that's never been done before. We're going to attack the biggest ship in their fleet using everything we have left. I need every person on this ship to think like a human. Find something, anything, that can be turned into a weapon. Throughout the HSV Defiance, the crew sprang into action. In the kitchen, the cook began loading the food dispensers with metal utensils and dinner plates. The navigation officer reprogrammed their emergency beacons to overload and explode on contact. Even the ship's doctor grabbed medical supplies that could be turned into chemical weapons. Sam worked frantically in the cargo bay, converting their remaining equipment into improvised weapons. Emergency foam dispensers became sticky bomb launchers. Compressed air tanks became pneumatic cannons. Even the ship's waste recycling system was modified to fire garbage at high velocity. This is insane, Tony muttered as he helped load dinner forks into a makeshift projectile launcher. Insane is what we do best, Sam replied, attaching an emergency flare to a welding rod. The aliens expect us to be logical and predictable. Instead, we're going to hit them with flying garbage and exploding dinner plates. Meanwhile, Amy climbed. Into Maintenance Pod 3, a small craft barely bigger than a closet. It had thrusters for moving around a ship's hull, magnetic clamps for holding onto surfaces, and a basic toolkit for emergency repairs. Against a dreadnought, it was like bringing a screwdriver to a tank battle. Amy, listen carefully, Dr. Thompson said through the communication link. I've been studying the power signatures from that ship. Look for the main distribution conduits. They'll be the biggest cables you can find, probably running along the main corridors. How do I know which ones to target? Amy asked. All of them, Jake said simply. Cause as much chaos as possible. Make them think their ship is falling apart from the inside. The maintenance pod launched from the Defiance just as the main battle began. The human ship opened fire with everything they had improvised. Dinner plates spun through space like deadly frisbees. Emergency flares streaked toward the alien vessels like tiny comets. Compressed air cannons fired streams of random objects at impossible velocities. To the Corvin fleet, it looked like the humans had gone completely insane. Their sensors detected incoming projectiles that made no sense.
Ace.
Kitchen knives, toilet paper dispensers, and broken computer parts flew toward their ships like a cloud of metallic hail.
Oh.
What are they shooting at us? Demanded a Corvin weapons. Officer? I don't know, sir, his sensor operator replied. My computer says they're firing eating utensils and bathroom fixtures. Commander Zektar watched the bizarre attack with growing anger. These humans mock us. They think this is some kind of joke. Destroy them now. But the human garbage attack was working better than anyone expected. The alien point defense systems were designed to stop missiles and energy beams, not flying silverware. Forks and spoons slipped through their shields and struck sensor arrays. Exploding toilet seats damaged communication equipment. Even broken light bulbs became deadly when they hit at orbital velocities, while the main fleet dealt with the garbage bombardment. Amy's maintenance pod slipped unnoticed toward the dreadnought. The massive ship's sensors were focused on the larger battle, treating the tiny pod as just another piece of space debris. Amy used the pod's magnetic clamps to attach to the dreadnought's hull near what looked like a maintenance hatch. The aliens probably never imagined someone would try to break into their ship using standard repair equipment. "I'm on their hull," she whispered into her communicator, looking for a way inside. She activated her plasma cutter and began working on the hatch seal. The tool was designed for emergency hull repairs, but it cut through alien metal just as easily as human steel. Within minutes, she had created an opening big enough to crawl through. The inside of the Corvin ship was like nothing Amy had ever seen. Corridors stretched in all directions, lit by strange blue lights that cast weird shadows on the walls. The air felt thick and smelled like burning metal, but she could hear something that made her smile: the hum of massive electrical systems. "Inside," she reported, "this place is huge, but I can follow the power conduits." Amy pulled out her circuit tester, a simple device used to check electrical connections on human ships. But electricity was electricity, whether it was human or alien. The tester's readings led her toward the strongest power signatures. As she crawled through the alien ship's maintenance tunnels, Amy could hear the battle raging outside. The Defiance was holding its own, as she knew they couldn't last much longer against the dreadnought's firepower. She found the first major power conduit, a cable as thick as her waist that pulsed with energy. Using her welding torch like a precision surgical tool, she created a small overload that sent sparks flying down the corridor. Somewhere in the ship, lights flickered and alarms began to sound. "What was that?" Zektar demanded from the bridge. "Sir, we're showing power fluctuations in Section 12. Amy moved to the next conduit and repeated the process. This time, she used her emergency power cells to create a feedback loop that made the alien systems fight against themselves. More alarms sounded as the ship's own power grid began to work against it. "There's someone on our ship," a Corvin security officer reported. "The power disruptions are too precise to be accidental." "Find them," Zektar roared. "Find them and kill them." But Amy was already 3 sections away, using maintenance tunnels that the aliens had forgotten existed. She moved through there, ship like a ghost, appearing just long enough to damage another system before vanishing again. On the bridge of the Defiance, Jake watched as sections of the dreadnought began to go dark. "She's doing it," he said with amazement. "Amy's actually bringing down their systems from the inside." "Not fast enough," Tony replied grimly. "Their main weapon is still charging. If they fire that thing before Amy can stop them..." Dr. Thompson checked her readings. "Jake, the dreadnought's main gun will be ready to fire in less than 5 minutes. Even if Amy cuts all their secondary systems, that weapon has its own power source." Jake made a decision that would either save them all or kill them trying. "Amy, can you hear me? Loud and clear, Captain? I need you to find their main weapon's power core. It's the only way to stop them from firing." Amy's voice came back strained but determined. "On my way, Jake, but if I mess with their main weapon, there's a good chance I won't make it out of here." "I know," Jake said quietly. "Amy, you don't have to do this." There was a long pause before Amy replied. "Yes, I do. It's what humans do, right? We find a way to win no matter what it costs." Amy Foster crawled through the narrow maintenance tunnel inside the Corvin dreadnought, following the thickest power cables she had ever seen. Her circuit tester beeped frantically as it detected energy levels that could power an entire city. Somewhere ahead lay the ship's main weapon, and she had less than 4 minutes to stop it from firing. The tunnel opened into a massive chamber that made Amy's breath catch in her throat. The room was bigger than a football stadium, filled with machinery that hummed with deadly power. In the center stood a column of pure energy that reached from floor to ceiling. Crackling with electricity, that made her hair stand on end. "Found it," she whispered into her communicator. "Jake, this thing is incredible. It's like they built a star inside their ship." Captain Jake Martinez's voice crackled back through the static. "Amy, you have 3 minutes before they fire. Can you shut it down?" Amy looked at the alien control panels surrounding the energy column. The writing looked like twisted metal, and the buttons glowed with colors that hurt her eyes. She had no idea how any of it worked. "I can't read their controls," she said. "But I don't need to read them to break them." She pulled out her welding torch and plasma cutter. If she couldn't understand alien technology, she would just have to destroy it the human way. She activated the plasma cutter and aimed it at the nearest control panel. The beam sliced through alien circuits like a hot knife through butter. Sparks flew as systems overloaded and warning lights began flashing throughout the chamber. But the energy column kept humming, and Amy realized the weapon had multiple backup systems. On the bridge of the HSV Defiance, Jake watched as more sections of the dreadnought went dark. Amy was doing incredible damage, but the main weapon was still charging. On his tactical display, he could see the energy readings climbing toward critical levels. 2 minutes, Amy, he called into his communicator. Dr. Lisa Thompson looked up from her science station with wide eyes. "Jake, when that weapon fires, the energy release will be visible from 3 star systems away. It'll turn this entire asteroid field into plasma." Commander Tony Baker gripped his chair as the Defiant shook under enemy fire. They had used up all their improvised weapons, and now the smaller Corvin ships were closing in for the kill. "We're out of options here. If Amy can't stop that main gun, she'll stop it," Jake said firmly. "She has to." Inside the dreadnought, Amy moved from control panel to control panel. Cutting through alien electronics with systematic precision, she used her emergency power cells to create electrical feedback, loops that fried entire sections of the weapon's control systems. Her welding torch became a surgical instrument, targeting specific components that looked important. But no matter what she destroyed, the energy column kept building power. The alien engineers had designed their ultimate weapon with redundancy after redundancy, even with half the control systems dead. The weapon continued its firing sequence. Amy checked her tools and realized she was running out of options. Her plasma cutter was overheating from constant use. Her welding torch was down to quarter power. Her emergency power cells were nearly drained. Then she noticed something the alien designers had never considered. The energy column was contained by a series of magnetic field generators positioned around the chamber. If those failed, the weapon's own power would tear the ship apart from the inside. "Jake, I think I have an idea," she said into her communicator. "But it's going to get really dangerous in here. Amy, you have 90 seconds. Whatever you're going to do it now." Amy studied the magnetic field generators. They were heavily armored and protected by energy shields, designed to withstand anything except direct contact with the tools she carried. She pulled out her circuit tester and began tracing the power feeds to each generator. The alien security systems finally found her. Energy bolts began firing from the walls as automated defenses came online. Amy dove behind a control panel as deadly beams scorched the air where she had been standing. "Security systems are active," she reported, rolling to avoid another energy blast. "This is about to get interesting." She waited for a gap in the firing pattern, then sprinted toward the nearest magnetic field generator. Energy bolts exploded around her as she pressed her plasma cutter against the generator's base and fired it up to maximum power. The generator's armor began to glow and melt. Warning alarms screamed throughout the chamber as the magnetic field started to fluctuate. Amy held the cutter in place until it overheated completely, then grabbed her welding torch and continued the attack. 60 seconds, Amy. The first magnetic field generator exploded in a shower of sparks and twisted metal. The energy column flickered and swayed as its containment field weakened. But Amy needed to destroy at least 3 generators to cause a complete failure. She ran toward the second generator as automated weapons tracked her movement. An energy bolt grazed her shoulder, spinning her around and sending her crashing into a wall. Pain shot through her arm, but she forced herself to keep moving. Amy, are you all right? Jake's voice was tight with worry. Been better, she gasped, using her good arm to activate her welding torch.
Dad!
But I'm not done yet. She pressed the torch against the second generator and began cutting through its protective casing. The metal was tougher than the first one, designed to resist exactly this kind of attack, but human tools were made to cut through anything. Given enough time and determination, the generator's base finally gave way. Amy dove clear as it collapsed in a cascade of sparks. The energy column lurched violently, and cracks appeared in the chamber walls as the weapon's power began to destabilize. 30 seconds, Amy. The weapon is almost ready to fire. Amy looked at the third generator and realized she would never reach it in time. The security systems had learned her pattern, and were concentrating their fire between her position and her target. Energy bolts created a wall of deadly light that no human could run through. Then she remembered something Sam Rodriguez had taught her about emergency power cells. If you overloaded them in just the right way, they became incredibly powerful. Grenades. She pulled out her last power cell and began rewiring it with shaking hands. Jake, tell my family I did something that mattered, she said. Amy, don't do anything stupid. Too late for that, she replied with a grin. I've been doing stupid things since I got on this ship. Amy activated the overloaded power cell and threw it as hard as she could toward the third magnetic field generator. The small device flew through the air like a tiny comet, trailing sparks and smoke. Energy bolts tried to intercept it, but it was too small and moving too fast. The power cell struck the generator and exploded with the force of a small bomb. The blast threw Amy backward against the wall, and her vision went black for a moment. When she opened her eyes, the chamber was filled with smoke and the screaming of dying machinery. All 3 magnetic field generators were destroyed. The energy column writhed like a living thing, no longer contained by the alien technology. Power readings throughout the chamber climbed beyond critical levels as the weapon's own energy began to tear apart the systems meant to control it. Amy, get out of there now. Jake shouted over the communicator. Amy tried to stand but found that her legs wouldn't work properly. The explosion had done more damage than she realized. She began crawling toward the maintenance tunnel as the chamber shook itself apart around her. On the bridge of the Defiance, Dr. Thompson watched her sensors in amazement. Jake, the Dreadnought's main weapon is overloading.
No?
The energy readings are off the charts. Is Amy clear? I don't know. There's too much interference to get a clear signal. The massive alien ship began to shake as internal explosions ripped through its hull. The energy column that was meant to destroy planets was instead destroying the ship that contained it. Lights flickered and died as power systems failed throughout the Dreadnought. Commander Zektar stood on his bridge and watched his ultimate weapon tear his ship apart. This is impossible, he roared. One human with primitive tools cannot destroy our most advanced technology. His weapons officer looked up from his controls with fear in his eyes. Sir, the main weapon is experiencing catastrophic failure. We need to evacuate the ship immediately. Never, Zektar snarled. I will not be defeated by inferior beings. But even as he spoke, explosions rocked the bridge. The lights went out, emergency systems failed, and the great dreadnought began to drift powerless in space. Amy Foster crawled through the maintenance tunnel as the ship died around her. Behind her, the weapon chamber collapsed in a final explosion that sent shockwaves through the entire vessel. Ahead of her lay the maintenance hatch and the slim hope of reaching her pod before the ship's life. Support failed completely. She had done the impossible. One human with basic tools had destroyed the most powerful weapon in the Corvan fleet, and now she just had to survive long enough to tell someone about it. Amy Foster dragged herself through the maintenance tunnel as the Corvan dreadnought shook itself apart around her. Her left arm hung useless at her side, and every breath felt like fire in her chest. Behind her, explosions echoed through the dying ship as its own weapon tore it apart from the inside. The maintenance hatch, where she had entered, seemed impossibly far away. Emergency lights flickered red, then went out completely, leaving her crawling through darkness. Only the faint glow from her circuit tester showed her the way forward. Amy, respond, please. Captain Jake Martinez's voice crackled through her. Communicator. The signal was weak and full of static, but she had never been happier to hear anything in her life. "Still here, Jake?" she gasped. "Your dreadnought problem is solved." Their big gun just became their big mistake. On the bridge of the HSV Defiance, Jake felt relief wash over him. "Amy, we're tracking your position. Your maintenance pod is still attached to their hull. Can you reach it?" "Working on it," Amy replied, forcing herself to crawl faster as another explosion shook the tunnel. Dr. Lisa Thompson looked up from her science station with wide eyes. "Jake, the dreadnought is breaking apart. I'm reading massive structural failures throughout the ship. Whatever Amy did, it's spreading through their entire power grid." Commander Tony Baker pointed at the main screen. "Look at the rest of their fleet." The smaller Corvin ships were backing away from their flagship as it died in space. Pieces of hull plating drifted away from the massive vessel, and its lights flickered like a dying star. The ship that had been built to destroy planets was destroying itself. "They're retreating," Tony said with amazement. "The whole fleet is pulling back." "Not retreating," Jake corrected. "Watching the alien formation. Regrouping. They'll try something else." Amy reached the maintenance hatch just as the ship's artificial gravity failed. She floated in the sudden weightlessness, using her good arm to pull herself through the opening and onto the dreadnought's hull. Her maintenance pod waited where she had left it. A tiny speck of human engineering attached to the side of the dying giant. She activated the pod's magnetic clamps and pulled herself inside. The small craft's life support kicked in, and Amy took her first easy breath in what felt like hours. Her shoulder throbbed with pain, but she was alive. "Pod systems are green," she reported. "Launching now." The maintenance pod detached from the dreadnought and began flying back toward the Defiance. Behind Amy, the massive alien ship continued to tear itself apart. What had been the most powerful weapon in the galaxy was now the most spectacular fireworks display. Commander Zektar stood on the bridge of his dying flagship and watched his dreams of conquest crumble around him. Emergency reports flooded in from every section of the ship. The humans had somehow turned his ultimate weapon into his ultimate defeat. "Sir, we must abandon ship," his second-in-command urged. "The power core is going critical." Zektar's hands clenched into fists. "This cannot be happening. One primitive human with basic tools cannot defeat our most advanced technology." "But it has happened, sir. The weapon's energy is cascading through our entire power grid. We have maybe 10 minutes before the ship explodes." Through the bridge windows, Zektar could see the human ship still floating in the asteroid field. It was damaged and small, barely worth his notice when the battle began. Now it had cost him everything. "Order the fleet to attack," he commanded. "Destroy that ship and everyone on it." "Sir, our weapons are offline. Most of our ships are damaged from there." Unconventional attack methods. Zektar looked at his tactical display and saw the truth. Half his fleet was crippled by flying garbage and improvised weapons. The rest were too far away to engage before his flagship exploded and took him with it. Amy's maintenance pod reached the Defiance just as the dreadnought's power core went critical. A flash of light brighter than a star erupted behind her, and the massive alien ship vanished in a ball of energy that lit up the entire asteroid field. "Amy's aboard," Sam Rodriguez reported from the cargo bay.
Oh, she's hurt but alive.
Jake felt a weight lift from his shoulders. "Get her to the medical bay." "Lisa, what's the status of the alien fleet?" Dr. Thompson checked her sensors. "There. In full retreat. Looks like losing their flagship convinced them this fight isn't worth it." But Jake wasn't ready to celebrate yet. Through the main view screen, he could see alien ships regrouping at the edge of the asteroid field. They might be retreating, but they weren't gone. A new voice filled the bridge, calm and authoritative. "HSV Defiance. This is Ambassador Velanara of the Galactic Council. Please respond." "This is Captain Martinez," Jake replied. "The alien diplomats." Image appeared on the screen. Her blue skin seemed to glow with excitement, and her silver eyes were wide with amazement. "Captain, I have been monitoring your battle. What I have witnessed is ... extraordinary. Did what we had to do to survive." Jake said simply. "You did far more than that," Velanara replied. You have revolutionized warfare itself. For millennia, galactic civilizations have fought with energy weapons and defensive shields. We have become predictable, following the same tactical doctrines over and over. She gestured toward the debris field where the dreadnought had been. You showed us something we had forgotten. Any object, any tool, any piece of equipment can become a weapon if used with creativity and intelligence. The Corvins are regrouping, Jake pointed out. This isn't over, actually, it is, Velinara said with a smile. I have just received word from the Corvan High Command. They are ordering their fleet to withdraw immediately. The destruction of their most powerful ship by primitive human tools has caused political problems for them. On the bridge of the Corvan command ship, Zektar's replacement was receiving similar orders. The High Command was furious that their ultimate weapon had been destroyed by beings they considered barely more than animals. The humans have embarrassed our entire empire, the new commander was told. Withdraw the fleet immediately. We will deal with this differently in the future. As the alien ships jumped to hyperspace one by one, Jake allowed himself to finally relax. They had won, but more importantly, they had proven something to the galaxy. Captain Velinara continued. The Galactic Council formally welcomes humanity as a full member, but I suspect our relationship will be different than with other species. How so? Jake asked. Most civilizations contribute to galactic society through their technology or resources. Humans, I believe, will contribute something far more valuable. You will teach us to think differently. Amy Foster limped onto the bridge, her arm in a medical sling but a huge grin on her face. Did I miss anything important? Just the end of the battle and the beginning of humanity's future in the galaxy. Jake replied. Dr. Thompson looked up from her station with a puzzled expression. I'm getting reports from across the sector. Other alien civilizations are asking for details about our advanced improvised weapons technology. Tony laughed. Should we tell them our advanced technology consists of kitchen utensils and maintenance tools? Not yet, Jake said with a smile. Let them wonder for a while. Ambassador Velinara's image leaned forward with curiosity. Captain, I must ask, how did you know that common tools could be turned into such effective weapons? Jake looked around. At his crew, Amy with her mechanical genius, Lisa with her scientific mind, Tony with his tactical brilliance, and Sam with his engineering skills. They were ordinary humans who had done extraordinary things simply by thinking like humans. Ambassador, on Earth we have a saying, necessity is the mother of invention. When humans need something, we find a way to make it from whatever we have around us. Today we needed weapons, so we made them. From garbage and repair tools, Velinara said with wonder. From imagination and determination, Jake corrected. The tools were just tools. The real weapons were up here. He tapped his temple as the HSV Defiance began its journey home. Word of the battle spread throughout the galaxy. The story of how humans turned everyday objects into instruments of victory became legend. Military academies began teaching courses in adaptive tactical thinking. Engineering schools studied human improvisation techniques. But perhaps most importantly, the galaxy learned that sometimes the most dangerous thing you could face wasn't the biggest gun or the strongest shield. Sometimes it was a human with a toolbox and the creativity to use it. Amy Foster looked out at the stars and smiled. Somewhere out there were civilizations with technology beyond human imagination. But none of them thought quite like humans did. And in a universe full of energy, weapons, and force fields, that might just be humanity's greatest weapon of all,